So, is it expected of from a judicial person, or is it expected of from that wing of the organ of the government, or rather organ of the state, namely the judicial department, to go into making of a law? So this is how it evolves around. So directly hitting upon the first ideology or theory as such, judges are declaring law, or as such we say declaratory theory. அப்போ இன்சிடென்டலா இதுல என்ன பார்க்கணும்னா, ஒரு எழுதப்பட்ட சட்டம் இருக்கு. அந்த சட்டத்தை வந்து நீதிமன்றத்துக்கு அந்த சட்டத்தினுடைய செல்லுபடித்தன்மையோ அல்லது அதில் இருக்கக்கூடிய சில விஷயங்கள் குறித்தோ நம்ம வந்து நீதிமன்றத்துக்கு எடுத்துட்டு போகும் பொழுது, அந்த சட்டத்தில் இருக்கக்கூடிய குறைகளை மட்டும் களைந்து சட்டத்தினுடைய செல்லுபடித்தன்மையை மட்டும் ஆராய்ந்து இது செல்லுமா செல்லாதா அப்படிங்கிறதோட ஜுடிஷியல் ஃபங்க்ஷனை டிக்ளேர் பண்ணிட்டு விட்டுருவாங்களா, இல்ல சட்டத்துல சில வேக்கூம் இருக்கு, சில கேப் இருக்கு, எக்ஸிஸ்டிங் தேர் எக்ஸிஸ்ட் சம் கைண்ட் ஆஃப் வேக்கூம் இன் பர்டிகுலர் லா. So now is it expected of from a judicial person in the name of judicial activism to take a step ahead and to cross their limit or cross their bounds, right? There is a strict or there is a thin line of separation or a thin line of demarcation which says that in performing or discharging the judicial functions while setting out the precedents, the judges are expected to remain intact, or they must not cross the Lakshman Rekha in the name of doing something under the guise of activism. Idu oru vaadam. The point I want to drive home is very, very straight to the issue. By activism, do we mean to say that even otherwise, if there is no law or there is a vacuum, legislative vacuum is there, we might have come across n number of judicial dictum or precedents as such, right? The famous precedent, as I would used to say always, legislative vacuum, how it was bridged or how it was built by the court in Vishaka versus state of Rajasthan is one best classic example on this line, right? When there was no law at all on a particular aspect to govern sexual harassment of working women at workplaces. Now the Supreme Court, the full judges bench of the Supreme Court, comprising of His Lordship Justice, Honorable Justice J.S. Verma, as he then was Chief Justice of India, as he then was, he went a step ahead in taking the activist mantle in his hand, right? Now the armory is so been filled with the weapon of activism, they now started making out, carving out a legislation. By judicial precedent, we mean to say, on one hand, judges have the power only to declare the law, whatever is there on the law textbook or statute as such. Now they're taking a step ahead. By doing so, they are now discharging the function equally, whatever is expected of from a legislature. Now they have taken, who is taking? Now the judges or the judiciary is taking up the responsibility of the legislature and now carving out a legislation as if it is so been made by a competent legislature. So do the judiciary have that kind of a power, or the judiciary possess that kind of a supremacy in making out a law? So this is what have to be decided in terms of judicial precedent. This is one particular aspect. The question may be asked, not though directly, indirect judicial activism, judicial creativity, one other fascinating, more fascinating concept which I used to say, there is a much of a creativity in what judicial activism is filled with, that colors of creativity, I used to say, or the fragrance of judicial activism can be just understood, or it can be just felt by way of judicial creativity. How is it possible? Now the judicial craftsmanship, whatever is the recent, very recent step which was taken by the Supreme Court in one particular aspect, right, which we used to say in terms of the criminal justice, criminal jurisprudence system, right? There was one particular, there was no law at all to regulate one particular system of compelling an accused to go for a voice sample, giving voice samples for investigative purposes. In Ritesh Singha versus state, right? That was a case where where the Supreme Court invoked its power under Article 141, particularly to render or to deliver complete justice. So ingadan judicial activism is related with Constitution of India. Appo Supreme Court ku enga power kuduthirukanga sir? You may ask a question, to make law, right? So adan the law laid down by the Supreme Court shall be the final and binding on all the other courts. So law making or law laying power in the not directly writing, sitting and writing a law as if that of a legislature, rather the judicial law making, that is what we used to say, judicial law making vested with the judiciary as such in the name of precedence, right? So unless and otherwise a precedent is so been hailed to be an authoritative precedent, so only such authoritative precedents are making a way for lawmaking, or it provides a facilitating mechanism or instrumentality in lawmaking, right? அப்ப விசாகா ஜட்மெண்ட் எடுத்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா அதெல்லாம் இருக்கும். எங்கெல்லாம் wherever the Supreme Court has exhibited this fragrance of activism, you may find the finest lawmaking which is so being handled by the Supreme Court in ample occasions. We can give a number of examples to it, right? So எப்படியெல்லாம் வந்து அப்போ Supreme Court is now taking its shape. அப்போ now there comes a question or there comes a debate as such whether Supreme Court can be empowered or will be conferred with the power to make a law. It is law says so, Constitution says so, yes, to do complete justice Supreme Court can do, but there are certain limitations or restrictions as such. So அப்ப யாரெல்லாம் இந்த மாதிரியான ஆக்டிவிஸ்ட் ஜட்ஜஸ் இந்த ஆக்டிவிசமையோ இல்ல Supreme Court or the courts as such as having the power to make laws, judges or lawmakers அப்படின்னு சொன்னவங்க எல்லாம் யாருன்னு பாத்தீங்கன்னா, so it involves a particular group of people in Indian jurisprudence is concerned, starting from His Lordship Justice V.R. Krishna here and Justice P.N. Bhagavati, right, H.R. Khanna, a number of people we have just seen. Insofar as US and UK, other people, Benjamin Cardoso, he is one of the person who was popularly hailed to be an activist judge, right? Felix Frankfurter, this is Felix Frankfurter, right? These are all the people who are all on the activist front. So judges do declare law, declare பண்றது வரைக்கும் தான், எழுதப்பட்ட சட்டத்தை நிலைநாட்டுவது, சட்டத்து பொருள் விளக்கம் காண்றது வரைக்கும் தான் அவங்க வேலை அப்படின்னு சொன்னதும் ஒரு சில people are there. Just people to few of them to name, Professor Gray, Gray, and Professor Carter, Carter, Carter. So these are all few people who believe that judges have the predominant function only to declare laws. So precedence பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் இதெல்லாம் கொஞ்சம் பார்க்க வேண்டிய விஷயம். So there are certain few areas which were untouched so far. It is so been explored to you right now. So இது வரைக்கும் precedence ஓட முடிஞ்சு legislation பார்த்தோம் டீடைலாவே, types of legislation and all those things. Custom also we discussed in a wider area. Now shifting our focus for rest of the day, right? Because I will be completing jurisprudence by this evening before I wind up for today's session. So இதுல முக்கியமா கவனிக்க வேண்டிய விஷயம் juristic concepts. Not more than some 2 or 3 concepts will be there. Thereafter juristic persons, இவ்வளவுதான். இதுல வேற எதுவுமே கிடையாது. Just you can make your understanding over this. இதெல்லாம் எங்கேயாவது திரும்ப படிச்சிருப்போம், எங்கன்னு உங்களுக்கு தெரியும். You can easily able to identify if I'm just start telling spelling out the particular concept as such. One such first and foremost concept, juristic concept, which is so been an eye opener for a learner of law, is that we must all know about that concept, namely the rights and duties. Now tracing back the origin of rights to constitutional law, duties also they are under constitutional law. Now how these two concepts are so particularly corresponding to each other, or so particularly having a relationship that of equal relationship or equated relationship, I say. Rights உரிமைகள் ஒரு பக்கம், duties கடமைகள் மறுபக்கம். அப்போ இந்த ரெண்டு கான்செப்ட் தான் பிரைமரி ஜூரிஸ்டிக் கான்செப்டா வச்சிருக்காங்க ஜூரிஸ்ப்ரூடன்ஸ் பொறுத்த வரைக்கும். சிலபஸ் எடுத்து பார்த்தா கூட you can able to find. So this is the tag end of the syllabus we have. அப்போ ரைட்ஸ்னா என்ன, டியூட்டிஸ்னா என்ன, this you must be appreciating. You can expect questions also, right? Right is something which law is so being obligated upon, or rather law is conferred upon a particular person, right? Whatever is being so conferred on any person inherently by any statute, now that are called as rights. So we can have a classification, namely, right, perfect right or imperfect right, statutory rights, constitutional rights, n number of classification, right? We're not going to explore as much as, right? So right அப்படினா something is there vested on a person, or something is conferred upon a person. So his enjoyment of that particular right expected him or it expects performance of a particular duty, right? So இப்போ ஒருத்தருக்கு ஒரு உரிமைகளை கொடுக்கிறோம், சட்டத்துல கொடுத்திருக்கு அப்படின்னா ஜூரிஸ்ப்ருடன்ஸ்ல அந்த உரிமைகள் வந்து சும்மா கொடுக்கப்படவில்லை. Say for example, I can give a better example. If you have fundamental rights, just keep this example. Right? அப்ப rights பத்தி கேட்டா you can just equate to constitutional law. Fundamental rights are there. All rights are not absolute. அது first தெரிஞ்சுக்க. No right is an absolute right. Every right comes with along with a restriction, or it comes along with some kind of a reasonable restriction, as such we can say. அப்போ fundamental rights எடுத்து பாத்தீங்கன்னா கூட when you start from article 12 to 35 in the constitution, when you can just look into the classification of fundamental rights, the very beginning we can able to trace out that rights, right? What is that? Now every right, as we know under article 19, there are certain freedoms are there. So now that freedom we equate in the terms of rights that are not so perfectly absolute, but it comes out with certain restrictions, namely the reasonable restrictions. அப்ப எந்த ஒரு உரிமைகளையுமே சட்டம் வந்து யாருக்கும் முழுமையாக வழங்குவதில்லை. இதுதான் ஃபர்ஸ்ட். So right is something which has been asserted or which has been guaranteed to a person, number one. Number two, such right is not so been guaranteed in a more absolute way. Rather, it comes with some kind of a restriction. This you have to keep in mind. So now, what is the facilitating mechanism of enjoyment of right? So a person who is being conferred with such a right, he can enjoy that right provided with certain kind of restrictions or whatever is so been prescribed in law. So right. So now you can classify rights as such, right? So you can classify rights as primary rights, secondary rights, perfect rights and imperfect rights. I'm just giving you the classification only. Right? Absolute rights are restricted rights, right? Absolute rights கொடுக்க மாட்டாங்க, நார்மலா இருக்காது, but we take into account absolute rights are restricted rights. So proprietary rights in terms of property, then right in rem, right in personam. This we have to once again explore to the greatest possible extent with examples. That will take quite long time for me to explain you. So these are all proprietary rights. So one, right in re propria, right in re aliena, right? Right to enjoyment of the property, right in re propria, REPROPRIA, propria. Right in re aliena, ALIENA, alienation rights. So only to whether you have a right to enjoy or you have got the right even to alienate, right? Then vested right or a contingent right. The next classification, vested and contingent right. Vested means it is absolutely vested on you. Contingent means on performance of a condition precedent. Conditional transfer transfer of property act, right? So all these things are there. Now we'll go one by one, right? As I was just pointing out, some primary rights and secondary rights. So primary rights, it is so been given without any compelling expectation of you to perform some kind of a positive duty. So right, you can enjoy it, right? That is all you can do it. Whereas secondary right is something, it expects a positive duty to be done by you in return. அப்போ ஒரு கடமையை நீங்க செய்யணும், செஞ்சாதான் அந்த உரிமையை நீங்கள் பெற முடியும், right? So a person who is coming to you and asking for, as a matter of right, asking for or demanding a sum of some 5,000 rupees or 10,000 rupees as loan. Now whether he can right-royally ask it, whether do he possess some kind of a right immediately to come and ask such a, in such a fashion? No. So law says he has to be duty bound to do something in return. He has to oblige to the terms and conditions to get his right of the whatever qualified under the right to get himself fulfilled. So what is to be fulfilled? He wants the debt, whatever he is requirement of. Now for which reason he has to be obeying or he has to be coming forward to ensure that he will be in a position to prompt enough to repay it properly. அப்ப அதை நான் திருப்பி கொடுப்பேன் அப்படிங்கிறது என் கடமையா இருக்கும் பட்சத்துல அந்த கடமையை நான் நிறைவேற்றுவேன் அப்படிங்கிற நேரத்துலதான் நான் கேட்கக்கூடிய ரைட் ராயலா கேட்கக்கூடிய ஒரு விஷயமையே என்ன பண்ண முடியும்? It can be enforced or it can be done or it can be guaranteed to me. Say for example, after right royally asking and I am now getting the amount and I am just leaving away. After the stipulated time, if I am not performing or discharging my duty, now the secondary right will emanate. Right? What is the secondary right? It has given way for the other person to enforce his right. Now who is the secondary person who is having the right to get enforced? The person one who lends the money. Right? My creditor has got every right to enforce as against me in terms of an enforcement action, by legal action, by going and filing a suit or instituting a legal cause of action. Right? அப்போ நான் வந்து ரைட் ராயலா கேட்டு ஒரு டிமாண்ட் பண்ணிட்டு போகும்பொழுது, when there is some duty attached with me, if in case of failure on my part to discharge that duty, whatever is stipulated in law, now the other party has got his right to be enforced in a manner known to law. So now how his right will be now enforced? Law has prescribed the mechanism. Right? So on my default or on my failure of performing one particular action, it has entailed in enforcement action of the right of somebody else. அப்ப யாரோ ஒருவருடைய உரிமையை எனக்கு எதிராக நிலைநாட்டி கொள்வதற்கு பரிகாரம் தேட அவர் தகுதியானவராக ஆகிவிடுகிறார். So that is why I said it has given a qualified right to somebody else in terms of a primary right being not being complied with. Now the secondary right emanates. அப்போ எனக்கு என்ன டியூட்டி இருக்கு? Some primary obligation is there on my part. Now that is not so been fulfilled. Now there is some other person who is there in an equally better placed position to enforce that particular right. Right? This is what. Now right in rem and right in personam. This is very very important. Taxல படிச்சிருப்போம், contractsலயும் படிச்சிருப்போம். Right? What is right in rem and right in personam? Right in rem means a right which could be enforced as against the person whoever there in the world by and large. யாருக்கு எதிராக வேணும், உலகத்துல இருக்கிற யாருக்கு எதிராக வேண்டுமானாலும் இந்த உரிமையை நிலைநாட்டி கொள்ளலாம். Whereas right in personam அப்படின்னா, it has got a personal relationship or a connection. What is the personal connection? It has to be enforced as against only that particular person against whom some kind of a claim is being there. Right? I can just tell you, right in rem and right in personam, I can make out an example. Right in personam, right, personal action, right? Say the very same example. In case of creditor-debtor relationship, you can enforce your right only as against the person against whom you has lent a loan. Right? This is what is there generally. Right? Now coming to right in rem, by people at large. Now we say, what is that people at large? Public law remedy. Now we say right in rem, against the entirety or against the whole world as such. Right? அப்போ say இதுக்கு இன்னும் பெஸ்ட் எக்ஸாம்பிள் டாக்ஸ்ல கொடுக்கணும்னா, டிஃபரன்ஸ் பிட்வீன் பிரைவேட் நியூசன்ஸ் அண்ட் பப்ளிக் நியூசன்ஸ். பிரைவேட் நியூசன்ஸா இருந்ததுன்னா யார் எந்த பர்டிகுலர் இண்டிவிஜுவலோ அவருக்கு அகைன்ஸ்டா மட்டும்தான் யூ கேன் ரைஸ் அவுட் a right in personam or a particular private right can be enforced. Whereas public nuisance அப்படின்னா யார் irrespective of whoever is causing public nuisance, anyone, a member of the public, any member of the public can come out with that kind of a enforcement action of the right, the public right which is vested in the general public. Best example, public interest litigation. Locus standi concept is the best example for right in rem. Right? Anybody, any member interested in the public. Right? So மற்ற சிவில் சூட் இதெல்லாம் போட்டீங்கன்னா யார் வேணாலும் வந்து போட முடியாது. Only the person who is having the personal action or in personam, whatever it is there between the personal transaction, only that person can be capable of enforcing his right as against the defendant. That's right in personam and right in rem. So these are all there. Then comes to right in re propria and right in re aliena. Right in re propria அப்படின்னா only the enjoyment of the property, the right for enjoyment of the property is so being conferred upon me. அப்படின்னா என்ன? இதை என்ஜாய் பண்ணிக்கலாம், இதை நான் ஏலினேட் பண்ண முடியாது, டிரான்ஸ்ஃபர் பண்ண முடியாது, I cannot encumber it, Nothing of that sort I can do, right? So what is that I can be expected of is all I can just enjoy the property, whatever is, right? So whereas if it come to right in re-aliena, I have got the right to alienate, right of alienation, transfer of property. You can just make note of that, all these things, right? Transfer of property. So I've been conferred with not only the mere right of enjoyment, rather I've been also been conferred with the right of alienation of such a property, right? This is what called as right in re propria, right in re-aliena. So these are all the broad classifications of the rights as such. Now coming to the relationship, the jural relationship between the right and duty. Now there is yet another concept we have to discuss here is duty. So it is the best quotation you can just expect. Rights and duties, to quote, rights and duties are corresponding and correlative to each other. Right? This is one particular definition you can have. This is by Holland. Holland has given this particular definition, or Aston, and rights and duties are corresponding or correlative to each other. Appa wherever there is a right, there is a remedy. Ubi just ubi remedium once again. அப்ப எங்கெல்லாம் ரைட் இருக்கோ அங்கெல்லாம் ஒரு டியூட்டியும் இருக்கு. அந்த டியூட்டியை பெர்ஃபார்ம் பண்ணாம விட்டா என்ன ஆகும்? The other person against whom the right is to be enforced will have a remedy before the court of law. அதனாலதான் அந்த மேக்ஸிமே வந்து the import of that maxim ubi just ubi remedium, right? That we have to just take into account while discussing rights and duties. So this is one particular legal concept or a juristic concept as such we will be discussing. Now coming to the next juristic concept is that there are two different concepts which will be relating each other. Ownership and possession. Now you might have heard all these popular saying, possession is 9 out of 10 points in law, right? Now what is that ownership and what is that possession, which we have to just look into. It is once again equated to terms of transfer of property particularly, right? So we all might have come across what is ownership and what is possession. We can put it in very, very simple way, right? It is nothing but possession அப்படிங்கிற வார்த்தை எங்க இருந்து வந்து அப்படின்னா possessionis அப்படிங்கிற வார்த்தையில இருந்து வருது. It is nothing but possessionis, right? This means a person who can enjoy, who can possess and who can enjoy. அவ்வளவுதான். Possession அப்படின்னா it is nothing but the person who is being entrusted with some property, either movable or immovable, anything. We are not confining in strict terms only movable nu kedaiyadhu, immovable nu kedaiyadhu. Any property which has been entrusted to a person, the person who is so being with such an entrustment is given a limited right of possessing it and enjoying it. Avlavudhaan, right? That is what we say possessionis. Possess, I can possess that. Now just parallelly look into the concept of ownership. Now what is the key element which is that distinguishing factor which makes a thin line of difference between possession and ownership? Is the title, or we can call jurisprudentially as vestitive fact. Title is derived from the word titulus, T-I-T-L-U-S, right? It is derived from the word titulus. That means vesting some fact of ownership to somebody. You are vesting the right of ownership, not only the right of possessing or enjoying, rather you are entrusting the entire ownership of that particular property over somebody, right? So the person, one who is having the absolute ownership over the property alone have got the power to transfer that property. Once again, transfer of property. I am not going into sections and all. I am just explaining you in the context of juristic concepts in a more jurisprudential way. So transfer of property நடத்தும்போது யாராவது சொன்னாங்கன்னா you can just equate these terms. Why? Because we have got this particular topics which is being to be dealt under jurisprudence. ஏன் ஓனர்ஷிப்பை வந்து லார்ஜர் பெடஸ்டல்ல வச்சுட்டு பொசிஷனை வந்து we are taking அதான் possession is only 9 out of 10 points in law. What is the remaining point? It is the ownership which decides the possession itself. அதனால தான் அப்படி வைக்கிறாங்க. அப்போ ஏன் பொசஷனை வந்து we are placing far lesser than ownership அப்படின்னா ownership is the right to use, enjoy, and the right of alienation per se is vested. That is why the person he possess the better title is none other than the owner himself, right? So யாருக்கு வந்து ownership better title இருக்கும் அப்படின்னா it is the owner who has got the right of ownership as such. So what is that feature which vested upon the ownership is that it is the vestitive fact. It is in jurisprudence we call that particular terminology as vestitive fact. Vestitive fact na ஒண்ணும் இல்ல, டைட்டில் யாருக்கிட்ட இருக்கு, இவ்வளவுதான். A very simple thing, right? So I may be lending my bike, or I may be letting out my house for rent and all those things. You can just make an example over here. By merely lending out my vehicle or letting my house to somebody, right, do the person who is in occupation of that premises or who is in possession of that particular vehicle or whatever is being entrusted to him can claim the right of ownership. Adverse possession is something different. I'm not going into touch all those things. It is all within the domain of property law. I'm not going into that. You may have a question. Adverse possession சொல்லணுமே, அதுக்குள்ள நான் போகல. So அப்ப யாருக்கிட்ட பொசஷன் இப்போதைக்கு இருக்கு அப்படிங்கிறது it is only to decide in a more particular temporary fashion, but the right of only the right of enjoyment we are talking about in possession. But when it comes to determining the right of title or the right of alienation or right to sell or transfer, etc., etc., now it is that question of ownership which decides the factum of transfer per se, right? அப்போ transfer பண்ணனும் அப்படினா it is only the owner who has got every right, not anybody else or not anybody who is in possession of the property will be having all those fettered rights thereupon. So ownership க்கும் possession, these are all some distinction you can just draw out, you can just make, because I'm not touching more on all these aspects. Why? Because this will be one or other way you will be learning it under some other subjects. Transfer of property, easement act, இதெல்லாம் திரும்ப படிப்பீங்க. So needless to say all these things, I'm just giving you a background fact of what the juristic concept would be for understanding, better understanding. So ownership and possession க்கு அடுத்து இருக்கக்கூடியது, the very next important concept of jurisprudence is that person. So whether a person is so being classified or do the persons or form part of the juristic concept, whether a person is a legal entity in the eye of jurisprudence. This is what the question which needs to be discussed. அப்போ ஒரு தனிப்பட்ட ஒரு நபர் person அப்படின்னு சொல்லியாச்சு அப்படின்னா the word is derived from persona அப்படிங்கிற வார்த்தையிலிருந்து வந்தது. person அப்படிங்கிற word is derived from the Latin word persona, right? Or we can say persona designata அப்படின்னு சொல்லுவோம். பர்టిక్యులரா சொல்றோம்னா a person who is so being given by virtue of their existence. அப்போ you may know who is a person first, that has to be discussed. What are all the different types of person is available under law? Law categorizes in a very, very simple fashion. One is natural person. அப்போ உடனே வந்து artificial person அடுத்ததா இருக்குமா? No. It is legal person அடுத்தது, அவ்வளவுதான். artificial person போடாதீங்க. We call that as a more legal entity. அப்போ natural person, when we say, who are all forming part of natural person, இதுக்கும் once again we will be going into Transfer of Property Act. So natural person, when we talk about as a juristic person, as a legal person, or rather we can distinguish whether the natural person has been having any legal status. The point I want to drive home is the legal status of person. Now, person by virtue of his birth, he acquired the rights whatever is conferred upon him in law. So by a mere existence or by mere birth itself, as a natural person, the personality is so being attached with the individual, right? So I call myself as a personality. Now I must be called first as a person who is having a natural existence, right? From when onwards the personality or the legal status which I can enjoy, the moment I have given birth, right? The moment after immediately I have born. அப்போ பிறந்த உடனே immediately, the moment I have just born out as a newborn baby, as an infant, I am entitled for all the rights by virtue of my birth as such. இது ஒரு கான்செப்ட். Even otherwise, going to the root of the matter, law says even person who is an unborn child is being fettered with that kind of a rights, whatever the child in womb. This is equated to a Latin term inventor samere, ENVENTRE space SAMRE, inventor samere. Inventor samere அப்படினா child in womb, an unborn child. Now you can just equate all the transfer of property act நீங்கலாம் படிச்சிருப்பீங்க. I need not repeat the sections and all. We can just refer to all those sections. And a jurisprudence, I'm not going into deal with any sections or case laws as such, right? So I don't want to, with the risk of repetition, I'm just avoiding all these things. So in the inventor samerங்கிற ஒரு வார்த்தை வந்திருக்கும். I'm just, all my endeavor is to just make you to go and facilitate yourself by taking transfer of property act. Just find out and spot out where this particular concept is there. Rights of an unborn child or a child in womb. So if a person படிக்கும்போது எதுக்கு சார் இதெல்லாம் படிச்சுட்டு இருக்கோம்? Now I was just talking about a person attached with a personality, persona designata. So legal concept as such, a person is to be enjoyed. What are all the rights that a person has been entitled to by virtue of his birth? So in such a fashion, now is it not expected of a person who is still being born, or rather is an unborn child or a child in womb, is also entitled equally in a mutatis way, that whatever rights that is so been conferred upon a born person, whether equally these rights are being enjoyed by the unborn person. Law says so. Yes, an unborn child is also be treated as a legal person in all stricto sensu manner for application of this persona designata concept, or concept of person or personam. Once again, right, in personam, right? So for unborn child you persona than treat பண்றோம். This is very, very clear. In jurisprudence, we don't distinguish, we don't demarcate, have a thin line of difference to eliminate the unborn persons from the eye of law, right? இது போக அடுத்தது, when you come to artificial person, so there comes a concept of corporate personality. Now coming to focusing more on the concept as such, corporate personality. Why we attribute the word personality after the word corporate? Now by virtue of its legal existence. What is that legal existence? It is so been artificially created. It is not a natural person or naturally born entity. It is a legal entity, right? செயற்கைனா ஒண்ணும் இல்ல. It is so been created by virtue of a law or by virtue of a statutory means or mechanism. So now take for example, a company is a legal entity, a corporation legal entity, a firm legal entity. Now do we call that as a person? Yes, in the eye of law we call a company or a corporate personality as a legal personality or legal person. Why? Law has created, law has given shape, law has, by the existence or by virtue of its creation. Every company create, as you know, by virtue of creation of articles of association, memorandum, etc., etc. From when a company is said to have been in existence as a legal personality. Once it is so been registered with the registrar of companies, you all know all these things, I need not repeat as such, right? Company is having its own name, right? Company can be having its common seal, it has got its perpetual succession, it has got its own whatever you say, the performance of the functions as such, as a corporate personality. So unlike that of a natural personality or a natural person, there is something you call it as an artificial otherwise or a corporate personality. It is also treated equally as person in a very particular fashion in the eye of law. So jurisprudence la person appdin eduthukta, it also includes within its ambit, within the definition of person, we mean to include corporate personality or corporate person as such. This we have to keep in mind, right? Now there is yet another concept which is also been categorizes the status of person in the cadre of animals. விலங்குகள், அதுவும் மனிதர்கள் அல்லது பர்சோனா டெசிக்னேட்டா கான்செப்ட் கீழே பார்க்கணுமா, அப்படிதான் அதை பார்க்கணுமான்னு கேட்கறேன்னா, நவ் there is something you call it as there is a legal status of animals. Law has recognized the status of animals as such as the personality, because they have got life, flesh and blood, everything unlike that of a person. Now the status may be something different, but jurisprudentially talking, animals is also treated as an entity, or animal is also treated as a person strictly. எங்க இருந்து சார் இதுக்கான traces இருக்கு? We got traces ever since from the ancient period, historical period. The better example could be the statute which been speaking more about the history and the sentiment which is so been attached in terms of granting justice to this animal, none other than Samanidhi Ganta Cholan or Manunidhi Cholan, as we used to say. The name has been modified as Samanidhi Ganta Cholan, right? So animal ku legal rights irka, whether animal can claim legal rights. So by and large we can say there are legislations to that aspect. So in the மாதிரி legislations ஏதாவது இருக்கா? Yes, Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, like Wildlife Protection Act, all these laws, specific animal specific laws, animal welfare laws we can use to say, right? These animal welfare laws, now of late we start treating these animals as such that of a person, right? Lower animals or status of animals is equal to that of a person. Up jurisprudentially speaking, animals will also be form part of one category under the common criteria of person as such. That apart, there is some other jurisprudential concepts which we will be discussing now. The concepts as such, we can just take certain inferences from Indian Penal Code and law of contract, right? What is that? The relationship of persons and the contractual and the other relationship, the tortious liability or the contractual liability, right? Why we have to discuss under jurisprudence is that, once again, the rights and liabilities of the parties which were conferred to individuals under law of contracts and as well under law of torts, making a strict distinction between contracts and tort as such. Both involves right in personam, right? It involves centers around the concept of right in personam. So party to a contract and party to a action of tort. So there are certain concepts which are common to both tort and contract as such, that we will be discussing here under juristic concept. The concept is nothing but law of damages or law of compensation as such we used to say. So yeah, the jurisprudence la paakarom appadina, now the rights and liabilities whatever is been centric around the contracts as well under law of tort, it has facilitated for one particular action under civil law. What is that action? Action for claim of damages. So now that have to be studied under the pretext of jurisprudence. Torts la thirupi paakuradhe da inga paaka porom, contracts la paakuradhe da inga paaka porom. When you talk about a tortious action, a suit for tortious wrong, tort abdina you all know is a civil wrong for which the common law remedy is once again the action for damages or recovery of damages, right? So when you talk about damage, it is between right in rem or right in personam, that have to be once again be quantified in terms of two different types of damages, namely liquidated and unliquidated. இதுவும் திருப்பி இங்க வரும். அப்ப எதெல்லாம் வெவ்வேறு சப்ஜெக்ட்டுக்கு கீழே பார்க்கறோமோ அது எல்லாம் ஜூரிஸ்டிக் கான்செப்ட்ஸ் குள்ளேயே திருப்பி வந்துரும், right? So all these things you have to just remember and you can just identify all those areas when you are studying those subjects. But damages is forming part of the jurisprudential concept, right? Tort, a civil action, whatever is to be initiated before a civil forum, the cause of action arising out of a tortious liability, right? That is part of the damages, one aspect. Now coming to contracts as such, equally breach of contract, right? Tort பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் any omission or a breach of duty, இங்க any breach of contract or contractual obligation which entail into the jurisprudential concept of fetching the damages or laying or making out the claim for damages from the person as such, right? So these two terminologies which you have to be thorough about in while you study all these things: liquidated damages and unliquidated. Liquidated means an ascertained sum of money which can be claimed as a quantified way in a more particular fashion, which is unquantified. It is not so been quantified, right? It is all unliquidated, right? Both are there available in tortious action as well as the contractual liability asset. These two terms you must be thorough about in discussing the juristic concepts as such. Now there are a lot more things which we have left. Once again, is that the liability part of action in terms of criminal wrongs or the penal liability. Liability அப்படிங்கிற ஒரு கான்செப்ட் வரும் இந்த இடத்துல, ரைட்? இதுக்கப்புறம் லாஸ்டா we will have this obligation as such. அதெல்லாம் பார்க்கணும் பின்னாடி, ரைட்? So now coming to liability, there are two different types of liability. One is tortious liability, which I was just pointing out. Now the other liability is that penal liability. Liability in terms of punishment or sanction. This is very, very important in terms of administration of justice. Yet another topic is also there under juristic concepts: administration of civil justice and criminal justice. So civil justice, obviously law of tort or contract, all these things which we will be discussing under the civil jurisdiction, the cause of action part of it, the liability, damages, which I have just pointed out. Now coming to the criminal action, right, the penal remedy, right? This is so being attached with the liability under criminal law, which is once again categorized under criminal justice administration or administration of justice of criminal wrong as such. இதுவும் பார்க்கணும். இங்க இது பேசிக்கான கான்செப்ட்ஸ் தான் போறேன். ஐபிசி செக்ஷனுக்குள்ள எல்லாம் போக மாட்டேன். I am not going into any sections as such. Now what is the administration of justice that is so been categorized under the criminal justice system? You all know India follows the adversarial method of criminal justice system, where accused has been given more predominant role, where it is the duty of the prosecution to prove the guilt on the part of the accused beyond all reasonable doubt. If there is any benefit of doubt, it is always to be claimed by the in favor of the accused as such. This is the general understanding. Now what is that we mean to discuss under administration of justice under criminal justice system? Theoretically we want to discuss something more, not in terms of IPC or CRPC. There are a lot of penological theories or the theories related to punishments as such, which you might be having under criminology and penology. Though that is not found part of your syllabus, you can also expect questions on that. There are different theories: retributive theory, then reformative theory, then deterrent theory, right? These are all the prominent theories of punishments which we will be discussing, right? So retributive, reformative, deterrent, expiatory, the other one is expiatory theory. So these are all certain theories which we will be discussing. Retributive theory, very, very simple. What all this theory want to project is only one particular ideology: பழிக்கு பழி, அவ்வளவுதான். Tit for tat, a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. So something is being done in a revenge manner, or a person who has done some wrong, he has to be better equated or compensated in terms of what? A revenge action or a retributive action. So we all found all these things in the Arab countries, right? Whatever has been found, the whipping, the most gruesome punishments, right? The Hammurabi's code which used to say, right? So all these things projects only one thing: and retributive action in law in terms of strict punishment. So to enforce the strictest punishment is the best method of reducing the crime. This is what is the proposition which has been put forth by the retributist or retributive theory, whatever has been projected. Coming to the next aspect is all reformative theory in a penological way, more and more on a rehabilitative. This theory is also called as rehabilitative theory, right? This you have to just take into consideration. Jurisprudence குள்ள எது வேணாலும் கேட்கலாம். இதெல்லாம் jurisprudence குள்ள hidden ஆ இருக்கக்கூடிய விஷயம். I'm just exploring it. This has all been covered in very many other subjects, but with risk of repetition, I'm just enlightening you on these aspects which you may be omitting it or otherwise. Right? Upper retribution opposite reformative. It is totally a different dimensional view. What the proponents of reformative theory says that you should not punish the offender, rather you try to reform him by way of reformative action, rehabilitative measures, maruvalvu, right? குற்றவாளிகளை சீரமைக்கிற வாழ்க்கையை சீரமைச்சு கொடுக்கிறது, மறுவாழ்வு ஏற்படுத்தி கொடுக்கிறது, இதெல்லாம் rehabilitative action under the more finest aspect of reformative theory. India, we have got that kind of reformative approach being put forth by certain judges like Krishna Iyer and all those people who are hailed to be reformists. You can just equate all these things to constitutional law also as well. Prison reforms, Sunil Batra's case, right? All these cases, Hussain Ara cartoon versus Home Secretary State of Bihar, Sunil Batra versus Delhi administration, right? So all these things, Sheila Barsi versus Union of India, right? All these cases where rehabilitative measures alone were propounded by the courts as such. Once again, judicial activism, the precedents we can relate. எதுல எப்படி கேட்டாலும் இதெல்லாம் டச் பண்ணி வரும். I'm just equating, that is why I'm just equating with constitution. I'm touching into IPC to some extent, criminology to a larger extent when I'm talking about theories of punishment, penological aspects. Right? This is reformative theory. So now comes to the next aspect of deterrent theory. It is prevention is better than cure. இதுதான் இதோடைய tagline. Nothing else is வருமுன் காத்தல் அப்படின்னா என்ன? So whenever the punishments are stringent, whenever you make punishments more stricter and severe in nature, obviously you are able to control the crime on one aspect. You can deter persons from doing that particular crime. Upon lesser punishments, people will not be in a position to take it in a very heavier sense. Rather, they will ignore it in a very lighter vein. So whenever the punishments are being inflicted in a more and more stricter and stringent nature, it will obviously deter the very prevention of the crime as such. So this is one particular view, right? The other one is expiatory, totally removing all these concepts of negative concepts. You totally expiate the crime by way of taking law or involving the legal mechanism by way of expelling the person totally from the society. தப்பு செஞ்சாச்சு அப்படின்னா totally you are just, அதனாலதான் என்ன பண்ணாங்க அப்பெல்லாம் தப்பு செஞ்சவங்க எல்லாம் ஹார்பர் அல்லது என்ன வாட் யூ கால் திஸ் டிரான்ஸ்போர்ட்டிங் தி பர்சன் இன்டு சம் அதர் பிளேஸ், வெளியில நாடு கடத்தி கொண்டு போய் எல்லாம் வச்சாங்க. இந்த ஸ்ட்ரிஞ்சன்ட் இந்த நாட்டுக்குள்ள இருக்க வைக்காம தப்பு பண்ணவங்களை டோட்டலி எக்ஸ்பெல்டு ஃப்ரம் தி சொசைட்டல் இன்வால்வ்மெண்ட். ஸோ தீஸ் ஆர் ஆல் வேரியஸ் தியரிட்டிக்கல் நோஷன்ஸ் ஆஃப் ஜூரிஸ்டிக் கான்செப்ட்ஸ் ஆஃப் பனிஷ்மெண்ட் ஆர் கிரிமினல் ஜஸ்டிஸ் சிஸ்டம் as such. So almost all the concepts as such under jurisprudence have been discussed. Now in particular focus with any other ideologies, whatever which we were putting forth right now in terms of jurisprudence, we are drawing the curtains down as such. Now we are going into a different set of understanding about these working facets of jurisprudence. இப்போ இதெல்லாம் சொல்லியிருக்கீங்க, இதெல்லாம் எங்கெல்லாம் இருக்கு? Special jurisprudence have been emanating or cropping up in different parts of the country. Activism பத்தி பார்த்தோம் ஒரு aspectல, right? Under judicial activism, right? There are a lot more concepts which we have to discuss. One such concept which we will be discussing for a couple of minutes before we enter into the other aspects is judicial creativity. இது எங்க வருது சார் அப்படின்னா, இதுவும் it is part of judicial precedent. So what is that judicial creativity means? You may have a number of ideas in your mind. The word creativity, do we have its origin or import in jurisprudence as such? No, it is an extension of the theory of precedent which we discussed. Right? I'm just going back to sources of law. Precedentல முடிச்சேன், judges law makersா law declare பண்றவங்களா இதெல்லாம் பார்த்தோம். Now once again, over and above what we discussed, there is one particular separate, a discrete concept of jurisprudence which has got its significance at this point of time. It is the concept of judicial creativity, having its close relationship, and it has got an ever developing facet of judicial precedent. இப்போ law precedent வந்து செட்டில் பண்ணும் பொழுது, லாவை செட்டில் பண்ணும் பொழுது, if some precedents are being handed over by and large by the courts as such. Now, what are all the elements that should be incorporated? Now we say judges on the activist front, judicial activism பார்த்தோம். அப்ப activist ideology வச்சிருக்கக்கூடிய judges jurisprudentially what is the methodology will be projected by them in terms of declaring a law or creative function of judges. இது ஒரு separate area. That is why I have reserved it at the later point. Now, which I will be discussing you. Right. I have got a few articles or materials are also on this. I will be discussing in terms of case laws as such. இப்போ case law சொல்றேன். அப்போ எந்தெந்த கேசஸ்ல எல்லாம் judicial creativity reflect பண்ணி காமிச்சிருக்காங்க at various point of time, constitutional law, labor law, here and there, every facets of individual jurisprudence will be discussing for judicial creativity in the context of precedents. We are not out of the subject, we are just touching precedents, and on the major purpose of precedents we will be discussing activism and creativity. So now in India we don't have the concept as such which was propounded in jurisprudence as judicial creativity separately, but this particular concept was on the forefront in US and UK and other comparative jurisprudence. Now, what is all about judicial creativity? How we can equate the creative function or role of a judge in jurisprudence or in judicial lawmaking? Appo essentially legislation has given a way for enacting a law. Right. After the law is enacted, it is placed into the society. Now, when there is some kind of a lacuna or vacuum that may arise in the law that is so being legislated, it is placed to the hands of the judiciary to interpret it. So now I have just travel back into the concept of precedents. Now, how the law interpretation function is so being creatively discharged or performed by the judges as such. This is a separate concept altogether under the classification or under the heading of judicial creativity in jurisprudence. So in the judicial activism கூட equate பண்ணிக்கலாம், law making function குள்ளேயும் கொண்டு வந்து பார்க்கலாம், precedent lay down பண்றதுலயும் பார்க்கலாம். So you can make out a three-dimensional view as such in terms of judicial creativity. Right. These are all gray areas which you may not be finding any particular text or any particular understanding as such. Right. So judicial creativity in terms of judicial precedent. Precedent is a source of law which we used to say. Now what is that? I have just said law laid down by the Supreme Court of India shall be the binding and final for all the other courts under 141, Article 141. Now this is the power which is so being widely exercised. At times we may say judiciary is transgressing its border, stepping beyond its limit, violating the thin line of border of Lakshman Rekha and stepping into the executive or the legislative wing or legislative role. Right. ஒரு precedent set பண்ணனும் அப்படினா, now what is that being so expected of simpliciter? Judges will declare whatever there is under the law. இது வரைக்கும் தான். அப்ப declaratory theory தாண்டி வேற ஏதோ ஒரு தியரி இருக்கு அப்படினா, it is that activist approach or activist ideology. இங்க தான் judicial activismங்கற கான்செப்டே வருது ஜூரிஸ்ப்ரூடன்ஸ்க்குள்ள. Now how judicial activism has contributed to the growth of jurisprudence, particularly in the domain of precedents, law of precedents அப்படிங்கறத பார்க்கணும். That is one left untouched area. Now originally when law have been enacted at various parts of the globe, when law is to be interpreted, judiciary was given that task only to make out or to interpret, to give meaning to the law as such. இதுதான் ஒரு particular function. So the function of the or the approach, the functional approach of the judiciary as such is to interpret the law which is so been laid down by the legislature, not a step more or not a step little less. Now what is that function? Gradually the judiciary has gained momentum to started criticizing or to take out a different role which is so been attached, not being so attached to them as part of the judicial function, hitherto been classified. And in India we don't follow strict separation of powers, but countries like US where they do follow strict separation of powers, they have also witnessed where judiciary, US Supreme Court has exhibited a ray of hope of judicial activism and creativity. Judicial creative functions எப்படியெல்லாம் perform பண்ணலாங்கிறத at later point of time, while setting the precedents, the courts have by and large determined to what extent the court can go beyond its scope of jurisdiction in the name of laying down law. Jurisprudence now law have judicial lawmaking has emanated or started finding its roots, right? So India in later part of 1970s post emergency era has witnessed the judicial lawmaking by virtue of judicial craftsmanship. Why we point out that post emergency has witnessed the new era of jurisprudence? Yeah, this is all because whenever the law that has been laid down by the parliament, now the Supreme Court, in the name of making out, laying down the precedents, had an occasion, had an opportunity to just examine by and large the law made by the parliament. Now it started finding out the flaws that are in existence or any vacuum that is so been expressly or explicitly there under a law. If at all there is a vacuum, now the judiciary went a step ahead. It encroached into the domain of legislature. By judicial activism, jurisprudentially speaking, the Supreme Court not only laid down or declared law, it literally went across a step into its dearth of knowing the negative consequences as well, right? It has now started giving the task or the role that to be performed by the legislature. சட்டமன்றங்கள் ஆற்ற வேண்டிய பணிகளையும் நீதித்துறை ஜுடிஷியல் ஆக்டிவிசம் மூலமா பிரசிடென்ஸ் லே டவுன் பண்றது மூலமா jurisprudentially they have assumed the power of their own. So the power hitherto not so been explicitly granted to the judiciary, it has ascribed a function as such. What is the function as such that is so been ascribed or been taken by the judiciary is judicial law making. This is one aspect which we have to understand in terms of jurisprudence. Judiciary ki law make பண்றதுக்கு, enact பண்றதுக்கு, legislate பண்றதுக்கு power இருக்கா? அதுதான் அப்போ சொன்னேன். I was just pointing out 141 says law laid down by the Supreme Court of India, right? எப்படி law making பண்றாங்கன்னா, it is in a different fashion by way of judicial interpretation. Now judiciary has started making the judicial law making functions. So when a law is being placed before the courts for the purpose of the interpretation of statute, I'm with risk of repetition, I'm just repeating once again here, right? Now by interpreting a particular law, now judiciary is trying to analyze systematically, now look into with all circumspection whether the law laid down by the legislature is complete in its whole sense or in a wholesome manner. If there is any lacuna or a flaw in the existing legislation, now the jurisprudential role or the juridical role of the judiciary, more particularly the High Courts and the Supreme Court, is so exhibited in terms of judicial activism. Judicial precedents அப்படிங்கிறது not only merely laying down law, but there are few contra views which I was just pointing out earlier, right? Judges are only law declarators, or rather judges are only interpreters. என்ன சட்டத்தில் இருக்கோ அதை இன்டர்பிரட் பண்ணி டிக்ளேர் பண்றதோட வேலை முடிஞ்சது. இது one notion, but there is completely a different ideology or a notion which was propounded by a different set of jurists or scholars, namely judges are law makers. அப்ப ஜுடிஷியரிக்கு சட்டம் இயற்றுகின்ற அதிகாரம் இருக்கிறதா? That is what they have straightly answered this question, whether judiciary has got the power to make or legislate law. This is the question. Now it was answered as more affirmative or in an activist approach. What is that activist approach? It says, by making a precedent, the court is bound even to find the mistakes or existing vacuum or lacuna in a law. Right? அப்போ precedent கொடுக்கும் பொழுது, it is not only merely declaring as it is what found in the statute, you can also exceed your limits of your jurisdiction by exhibiting or by invoking your activist approach. Right? அப்போ ஜுடிஷியல் ஆக்டிவிசம் எங்க சார் இருக்கு? அப்போ ஜூரிஸ்ப்ரூடன்ஸ்ல எங்கேயாவது ஒரு இடத்துல இருக்கணுமே? இல்ல. Article 32 and 226 are the best example in constitutional law, where the jurisprudential facet of judicial activism is once again imbued, or it is inherently, or it is so been given with respect to Supreme Court as well as High Court by way of observing the powers, not only observing the powers under Constitution, once again exhibiting in a very exemplary fashion by way of granting relief to the maximum extent. Right? அப்ப சட்டத்திலேயே இல்லாத விஷயங்களை கூட இந்த ஜுடிஷியல் ஆக்டிவிசம் மூலமா by way of laying down precedents as such. That is why the most proponents like Blackstone and other people have subscribed to the view saying that judges are not only law interpreters, rather the judges are law makers. So they do have the power to make a law, to legislate a law. That particular thing is so been witnessed in India as such in 1997, way back in Vishaka's case, right, where there was no law. I used to repeatedly telling about judicial activism kana particular law making kana provision eppadi eduthukorom appadina presidential way la eduthukorom. Now how this presidency has got an authoritative role, one particular aspect which we have to discuss. Binding nature of precedents. This is what we discussed, ratio deciderative, objective condal. Now what is the authoritative role which a precedent could be attributed or assumed? இப்போ எப்போ ஒரு precedent authoritative எடுப்போம் அப்படின்னா, unless otherwise if it is not so been expressly overruled by a larger bench at a later point of time or in a future point of time. So ஒரு கோர்ட், சுப்ரீம் கோர்ட்டை எடுத்துக்கிட்டோம் அப்படின்னா normally they have division bench. Now this understanding you must be keeping in your mind. So now when a division bench has given out one particular judgment, it holds good by and large, it will be hailed to be an authoritative judgment or a precedent unless and until if it is so being overruled by a larger bench. This is the general rule. Larger maybe in terms of 3, 5, 7, 9, 11 or 13. இது வரைக்கும் 13 தான் highest bench. நம்ம எல்லாத்துக்கும் தெரியும் கேசவானந்த பாரதி கேஸ்ல. அப்போ authoritative precedent னு சொல்லியாச்சுனா, it is that precedent which is laid down or handed over by a larger bench ever since. Right? அப்போ இது வரைக்கும் ஏதாவது லோயர் ஸ்மாலர் பெஞ்சஸ் ஏதாவது கொடுத்திருந்தாலும் கூட அதுல கான்ஃபிளிக்ட் ஏதாவது வந்துச்சு அப்படின்னா, if it is so being overruled explicitly by a larger bench of a judges, then that becomes an authoritative precedent for all purposes of handing over a binding precedent. அப்போ எங்கெல்லாம் ஒரு authoritative precedent வந்து வைக்கிறாங்களோ அப்போ எல்லா இடத்துலயும் now you can have the binding nature of that precedent. So precedentக்கான binding nature எங்கெல்லாம் பார்க்கலாம் அப்படின்னா, you can have the colors of the binding nature in a larger bench judgment. So because it is not so been yet overruled, right? அப்போ overrule பண்ணாத இருக்கிற வரைக்கும் you can have the binding force. அப்போ later point of timeல overrule பண்ணிட்டாங்க அப்படின்னா, this judgment becomes an overruled judgment. The judgment which is newly been now, the law is being settled by the judges at a later point of time, that will be called as authoritative precedent. அப்போ precedent is held to be authoritative only or until otherwise if it is so been upheld by a larger bench. This is a general understanding you must be keeping in terms of precedent as such. So I think I have come closer to the entire concepts as such to be discussed under the broader limb of the subject, jurisprudence. So examination point of view, procedural or practice point of view, I have given you as much as possible insights into the subject within a given limited span of time. Hope so. So now any doubts or discussions is thrown open by and large. Ella subjection touch panni, constitution, jurisprudence, interpretation, anything can be discussed. So in the subject la enna mariyana questions varum illa whatever possibility of asking previous year question paper vechirundinga adha discuss pannalam, because I don't have the question paper right now with me in my hand. So if you have any questions asked pertaining to whatever we discussed, we can now discuss.
I think you can raise your hands, participants. I'll unmute you.
So I don't think so. Beyond this, you not be screwed up with that kind of a technical or intricate question as such in jurisprudence when it comes to objective type. Provided you have to be thorough with the analytical approach or in a more assertive way, reasoning, analysis, and the question paper previous year, I will be in a position to tell you, dispel you the answers, whatever the doubts. Someone has raised the question, hand.
Please unmute. Lakshmi, உங்களுக்கு unmute கொடுத்துட்டேன்.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, so in this case, can we directly say that it is that the can we directly say that because of the precedents and because of 32 and 266 that judiciary has got the right to make law?
226, certainly judicial activism is a limb of article 226 and article 32. Not in all cases. That is why I say a Lakshman Rekha must be there. A thin line of difference judiciary must be keeping without transgressing into the borders of the executive domain or the legislative domain. Not the judiciary is being conferred with an unfettered restrictions, or it is conferred with a sky limit power to make law in each and every instances. Right? There is some justification the judiciary must be having in its. I don't want to make any personal observation into it. We do have in all the I don't think so you are from Chennai or from outside Chennai or from Tamil Nadu elsewhere, right? So we do have a lot of activist judges right now, right? In each and every governmental action, in each and every policy making, courts have just now come up to risen up to that level or limit, in making out the executive or the legislature in a very, very fine-tuned way, where executive or legislature turned out to be an unruly horse. Now somebody must be there to have the hold in their hand. Now it is that role the judiciary has assumed because of the inaction on the part of the executive or on the part of the legislature as such. So I don't think so you can, by virtue of article 32 or 226 alone, the courts can assume power and they can do judicial lawmaking in each and every cases without any restrictions. They do have got some kind of a restrictive, or they must be maintaining a thin line of separation as such, right? They should not transgress into the borders as such into the other domain. No excessive use of judicial powers by getting into the domains or barging into the domains of the other wings of the government as such. Right.
Okay, sir. So if the question is particularly regarding the 32 and 226, then we can say that yes, judiciary has got the rights to make.
Catena of judgments are on the line. You can. That is why I have just come out with all those judgments where judiciary has directed in all these cases. Vishaka is the best example. All MC Mehta cases, right? I was just pointing out Sunil Batra's case, prison violence case. Right? N number of suo moto they are taking cognizance into n number of instances. Right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Suo cognizance are taken. Right.
Thank you, Lakshmi. If anyone has any question, please post it in the chat box as well. The chat is open for you to post the question. Please raise your hands. உங்களுக்கு ஏதாவது சந்தேகம் இருந்ததா, this is a nice opportunity to discuss. I don't find. Yeah, one person is raising hands.
Yes, Mr. Ramchandran.
Yes, Ramachandran, please unmute. Yes, sir. பேசுங்க.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Sir, வணக்கம் சார்.
வணக்கம் சார்.
Good evening, sir. Sir, judicial process law, due process law, இதுக்கு என்ன சார் டிஃபரெண்ட் இருக்கு?
சார், டியூ ப்ராசஸ்ங்கிற ஒரு கிளாஸ் வந்து அமெரிக்கன் கான்ஸ்டிடியூஷன்ல இருந்து நம்ம களவாடப்பட்டு நம்ம வந்து யூஸ் பண்ணிட்டு இருக்கோம். we are using or rather we have borrowed that term of due process of law அப்படிங்கறத யுஎஸ் கான்ஸ்டிடியூஷன்ல தான் இருக்கு. அங்க இருந்து எடுத்து ஆர்டிகல் 21க்குள்ள வச்சுக்கிட்டோம். ப்ரொசீஜர் எஸ்டாப்ளிஷ்டு பை லா அப்படிங்கிறது. ரைட். எதையெல்லாம் செய்கிறோமோ அதையெல்லாம் சட்டத்தின் வழியாக நிலைநாட்டப்பட்ட ப்ரொசீஜரை வைத்து மட்டும்தான் செய்யப்பட வேண்டும். சட்டத்தை மீறி எதையும் செய்யக்கூடாது, ஆர்பிட்ரரியா எதுவும் பண்ணக்கூடாது. இதுதான் procedure established by law is equal term of due process of law. Judicial process அப்படிங்கிறது the process by which the judiciary or the judges are expected to deliver justice or dispense justice administration, judicial administration. இந்த judicial processங்கிற வார்த்தையை உருவாக்குனவர் ஜஸ்டிஸ் பெஞ்சமின் கார்டசோ. பெஞ்சமின் கார்டசோங்கிறவர் தான் அந்த வார்த்தையை உருவாக்குறாரு. ஜுடிஷியல் ப்ராசஸ்னா ஒண்ணும் இல்லை, in a course of administration of justice, நீதியை நிலைநாட்டி கொண்டு போகும் பொழுது அல்லது நீதி பரிபாலனம் செய்யும் பொழுது என்ன விஷயங்களை எல்லாம் கடைபிடித்து நீதிபதிகள் நீதி பரிபாலனம் செய்ய வேண்டும். ரைட். இதெல்லாம் தான் ஜுடிஷியல் ஆக்டிவிசம், கிரியேட்டிவிட்டி, ஏகப்பட்ட விஷயங்கள் அதுக்குள்ள இருக்கு. ரைட். the process of effectivating the judges or the judiciary by and large to administer or to dispense justice system in the country, dispensation of justice in the country, அதுதான் ஜுடிஷியல் ப்ராசஸ். நீதி முறை அல்லது நீதி நிலைநாட்டும் நீதி நிர்வாக முறை, அதுதான் ஜுடிஷியல் ப்ராசஸ்ங்கிறது. டியூ ப்ராசஸ் கிளாஸ்ங்கிறது என்னன்னா சட்டத்தின் படியாக சில விஷயங்களை செய்ய வேண்டும். ப்ரொசீஜர் எஸ்டாப்ளிஷ்டு பை லா, சட்டத்தின்படி நிறுவப்பட்ட உருவாக்கப்பட்ட நடைமுறைகளை பின்பற்றி மட்டும்தான் சில விஷயங்களை செய்ய வேண்டும். அது வேற, இது வேற. So judicial process வேற, procedure established by law is completely different. இது நீதிபதிகளுடைய கடமையை சொல்லுது ஜுடிஷியல் ப்ராசஸ்ல. அங்க சட்டம் எப்படி உருவாக்கப்பட வேண்டும், எந்த நடைமுறைகளை பின்பற்றப்பட வேண்டும், எந்த நடைமுறையை நோக்கி சட்டத்தை போட வேண்டும், சட்டத்தால் என்னென்ன நடைமுறைகளை கடைபிடிக்க வேண்டும் என்று வெளிப்படையாக கூறப்பட வேண்டும்ங்கிறதெல்லாம் ஆர்டிகல் 21ல வருது. அதை நம்ம எங்க இருந்து காப்பி பண்ணிக்கிட்டோம்னா நம்ம யூஎஸ் கான்ஸ்டிடியூஷன் எடுத்து வச்சுக்கிட்டோம். டியூ ப்ராசஸ் கிளாஸ்னு அவங்க வச்சிருக்காங்க. அந்த கிளாஸுக்கு பாரோ பண்ணி நம்ம இங்க ப்ரொசீஜர் எஸ்டாப்ளிஷ் பை லான்னு வார்த்தை பிரயோகத்தை மாத்திக்கிட்டோம். அவ்வளவுதான், வேற ஒண்ணும் இல்லை. ரெண்டும் ஒண்ணுதான். டியூ ப்ராசஸ் கிளாஸ் இஸ் ஈக்குவல் டு டியூ ப்ராசஸ் கிளாஸ் யூஎஸ் இஸ் ஈக்குவல் டு ப்ரொசீஜர் எஸ்டாப்ளிஷ்ட் பை லா ஆர்டிகல் 21 இன் இந்தியா. அவ்வளவுதான், முடிஞ்சு போச்சு.
ஓகே சார். ஓகே, थैंक यू சார்.
சர்வியன் சார், இதெல்லாம் சர்வியன் ஹெரிடேஜ், டாமினன் ஹெரிடேஜ்லாம் ஈஸ்ட்மென்ட் ஆக்ட் நடத்துறவங்ககிட்ட கேளுங்க சார். ப்ராப்பர்ட்டி லால இப்ப ஸ்டார்ட் டெல்லிங் ஈஸ்ட்மென்ட் ஆக்ட் ஆர்டிகல் செக்ஷன்ஸ்க்குள்ளலாம் நான் போகணும். திருப்பி ஒரு செக்ஷனா படிச்சு நான் சொல்லணும். செக்ஷன் 11, 12 அதெல்லாம் போய் ஈஸ்ட்மென்ட் ரைட்டுக்குள்ள போய் சொல்லணும். ரைட். ஓனர்ஷிப் ரைட்டுக்குள்ள போகணும். Whatever is the limit of scope of my subject, you can ask, sir. ஆமா, டாமினன்ட் ஹெரிடேஜ், சர்வியன்ட் ஹெரிடேஜ் எங்க ப்ராப்பர்ட்டி லா கீழ வருது. அதெல்லாம் ஈஸ்ட்மென்ட் ஆக்ட் எடுத்து படிங்க ஃபர்ஸ்ட். செக்ஷன் 11, 12, 13 onwards, all those sections you have to just look into. எங்க வருது? ரைட் ஆஃப் ஈஸ்ட்மென்ட், ரைட் ஆக்சஸ், ரைட் டு வே, ரைட் ஆஃப் யூசேஜ் ஆஃப் வே, all those things. ட்ரான்ஸ்ஃபர் ஆஃப் ப்ராப்பர்ட்டி யார் நடத்துறாங்களோ அவங்க கிட்ட கேளுங்க. they will be in a better position to explain you. judicial restraint, very good, very good. judicial restraint தான் சொன்னா லக்ஷ்மன் ரேகா, borders, touching the borders or you should not cross the border. judicial self restraint, very good. this is one concept. அப்ப ஆக்டிவிஸ்ட் ஜட்ஜஸா இருக்கிறதுனால நம்மள மீறி, வரம்புகளை மீறி நீதித்துறை செய்ய வேண்டிய வேலைகள் அல்லாத பிற துறைகளோட வேலைகளை நம்ம செய்ய போகிறோமா, நம்ம எல்லை மீறுகிறோமா, எல்லை தாண்டி நம்ம வேலையை செஞ்சுக்கிட்டு இருக்கிறோமாங்கிறத பாக்குறதுக்காகத்தான் என்ன பண்ணணுங்கிறாங்க ஒரு ஜட்ஜஸும் ஒரு நீதிபதிகளும் ஜுடிஷியல் செல்ஃப் ரெஸ்ட்ரெயின்ட் அவங்களுக்கு உள்ளாரையே வகுத்து வச்சுக்கணுங்கிறாங்க. என்ன செல்ஃப் ரெஸ்ட்ரெயின்ட்? a restriction. So we will discharge, we will dispense only the judicial functions of interpreting the law. We will not barge or we will not encroach or we will not just interfere into the domain of the legislature or the executive. Right? எப்போ வந்து அதை தாண்டி வரலாம், லக்ஷ்மன் ரேகாவை தாண்டி வரும்பொழுது யோசிக்கணும். என்ன யோசிக்கணும்? எங்கெல்லாம் இன்ஆக்ஷன் இருக்கு, யாரோட இன்ஆக்ஷன்? லெஜிஸ்லேச்சரோட இன்ஆக்ஷன், எக்ஸிகியூட்டிவ் இன்ஆக்ஷன் இருக்கும் பொழுது அதை வேற யாருதான் கேள்வி கேட்கறது? பூனைக்கு யாருதான் மணி கட்டி விடுறது? Someone must be there to bell the cat, right? So it is that judiciary is taking in that perspective. Now judiciary is now throwing or just now expanding the cudgels, whatever the weapons that is available in the armory of the judiciary. It is just taking the cudgels down and started making out that kind of a law or interpreting, saying that there is some vacuum we find per se in the law that is so being made by the legislature. We find some vacuum with the executive inaction. So we lay down certain guidelines, we exhaustively give certain parameters in the name of judicial guidelines. We are laying down the dictum under the judicial activism. Now you follow all these things, or you better follow all these things. You replace these things with a law, whatever to be appropriately legislated by the legislature. So until such time a law is being put into place, you follow these guidelines, whatever we have given out by way of judicial dicta, by way of the guidelines, right? எங்கெல்லாம் வந்து லா இல்லாம இருக்கும் அங்கெல்லாம் கோர்ட் வந்து என்ன பண்ணுது, அவங்களாவே கைட்லைன்ஸை வந்து ஃப்ரேம் பண்ணி லெஜிஸ்லேச்சர் கிட்ட கொடுக்குறாங்க. அதுக்கெல்லாம் ஏகப்பட்ட லாஸ் வந்துருச்சு. நம்ம பார்த்தோம். Vishaka's case is a classic example which I can quote. Sexual harassment of working women at workplace-க்கு சட்டமே கிடையாது. 1997 Vishaka guidelines வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் தான் first time it has reiterated or not reiterated, it has just thrown light or opened the eyes of the legislators. The legislative wisdom was just nurtured by the judgment which was rendered by His Lordship Justice late J.S. Verma on the bench comprising of the other fellow judges, right? B.N. Kripal and Sujata Manohar, with great respect, right? என்ன பண்றாங்கன்னா அப்சல்யூட்டா வந்து எந்த விதமான ஒரு லாவுமே இல்லாம இருக்கிற நேரத்துல இந்த லாவை வந்து நீங்க எனாக்ட் பண்ணி இனிமேல் வந்து you have to put into place ன்னு சொல்லி கைட்லைன்ஸ் கொடுக்குறாங்க. Now it took a 14 or 15 odd long years for the parliament to enact a law, right? So they can give only guidelines. சட்டத்தை எழுதி கையில கொடுக்க முடியாது. சட்டத்தை வந்து ஒன்னு போட்டா நல்லா இருக்குமே அப்படின்னு ஒரு they are just giving it in the form of a judicial mandate, right? Anything else? Someone has asked the question, absolute right, restrictive right, what is that? I do not got the question. Oh, kindly repeat the question. Absolute right, without any restriction. Say for example covenant, restrictive covenant படிச்சிருப்போம். transfer of property once again இது வருது. absolute enjoyment கொடுக்கிறது. அப்படி இல்லாம லைஃப் டைம் வரைக்கும் என்ஜாய் பண்ணிட்டு அதுக்கப்புறம் வந்து என்ன ஆகும், you can enjoy it, அதை விற்க முடியாது, எதுவும் பண்ண முடியாது. restrictive covenant லைஃப் என்ஜாய்மெண்ட் மட்டும் கொடுக்கிறது ஒருத்தருக்கு. the right of enjoyment will be there until life. It will not be sold or it will not be subject to any alienation, transfer, encumbrance, எதுவும் பண்ண முடியாது. நான் I can enjoy to that restricted limit, அவ்வளவுதான். transfer property act வரும், இதெல்லாம் திருப்பி restricted covenant எல்லாம். Yes, any other questions?
One more question is there. Whether principles of natural justice includes one who decides must hear, to what extent this principle is followed by our High Court as far as roster system is concerned?
Sir, இந்த மாதிரில கேள்விலாம் கேட்காதீங்க சார். நான் I cannot, don't expect me. நீங்க படிக்க வந்தது ஒரு ஜுடிஷியல் ஒரு டிஜே பரீட்சைக்கு படிக்க வந்திருக்கீங்க. Don't make me to get wild. You are here to learn something. நீங்க வந்து என்னமோ பிராக்டிகலா நடத்துறப்ப நான் கூட தான் பிராக்டிகலா நிறைய பர்சனல் கமெண்ட் கொடுத்தா ஒத்துப்பீங்களா? நாளைக்கு மீடியால எல்லாம் ஃபிளாஷ் ஆகும் என்னை பத்தி. பர்சனலா ஜட்ஜ் பேரை தான் நான் சொன்னேன் அது வரைக்கும். இதெல்லாம் என்ன மேட்டர்ஸ் ஆஃப் மோர் சென்சிட்டிவிட்டி இன் நேச்சர். தெரியவே தெரியாதா உங்களுக்கு? நீங்களாம் ஒரு ஸ்டூடெண்டா இருந்து படிங்க. எல்லாரும் அட்வொகேட் தான். நானும் 13-14 வருஷம் பிராக்டிஸ் பண்ண அட்வொகேட் தான். எனக்கு அதெல்லாம் சொல்ல தெரியாத எக்ஸாம்பிள்ஸ்க்கு. ஏன் ஐம் ரெஸ்ட்ரிக்டிங் மை டங், மை ஸ்லிப் ஆஃப் த டங் கூட அது வரக்கூடாது நான் ஏன் பாத்துக்கிறேன்? யாரையாவது பேர் சொன்னா இப்போ இதெல்லாம் யாரோட வேலை? இதெல்லாம் யாருக்கு? ஹை ஹெல்ம் ஆஃப் அஃபேர்ஸ் நடக்கக்கூடிய கான்ஃபிடென்ஷியல் ஒர்க். டோன்ட் provoke me on the other side. Don't rub me on the other side, sir, please. Sorry.
The candidates who are here are going to be judges of tomorrow. Please think yourself in
sir, please
that
keep
position.
in mind that you are once again under the administrative supervisory control of the Honorable High Court of Judicature at Madras after your appointment as a district judge, right? So you are having such a responsible role as a judicial officer, higher judicial officers. பர்சனலா பேசலாம்னா நீங்க வாங்க, எப்ப வேணாலும் வாங்க. நான் சென்னை வந்துடுறேன். வந்ததுக்கு அப்புறம் உட்காந்து மணிக்கணக்கில் பேசலாம் ஆபீஸ்ல. ஐம் அட் லிபர்ட்டி. to throw open a discussion on a right trial, not on this forum of this kind, not on a platform of this kind. Sorry.
Okay, no issues. Please be to the point or the topic which the speaker is deliberating today. There's one more question.
What is that negative injunction? Kindly unmute and ask the question, madam. Yaro type negative injunction கேட்டிருக்கீங்க.
Vidya?
For what is that? For
Vidya, hand raise பண்ணுங்கப்பா. I think the name is Vidya, but it's not. Yeah. Vidya, unmute பண்ணுங்க. Yes, Vidya. You ask your question.
Sir, this is one question. This is one question asked last year TJ paper, sir.
Yes, what is that?
The state, in addition to obeying the Constitution's negative injunctions not to interfere with certain of citizens' liberties, must fulfill its positive obligation to protect the citizens' rights from the encroachment by society and strive to promote realization of rights by its people. This idea in constitutional theory would be more appropriately suited to which of the following terms? They have given 4 terms, sir. Constitutional mandate or constitutional mandate, constitutional review, positive constitutionalism, negative constitutionalism.
Constitutional mandate will be the answer. Normally, I suppose. Huh?
Can you explain?
Yes. See, the question which you have read is, in the name of giving some kind of enforcement of a positive duty or positive rights, you should not be in a position to give something negative. அப்போ எனக்கு ரைட் நான் என்ஃபோர்ஸ் பண்ண போறேன் அப்படின்னு கோர்ட்டுக்கு போய் நிற்கும் பொழுது கோர்ட் must be particularly taking into consideration of the mandate. What is that? Whenever there is a violation or infringement of a right, only the person is coming before you. Already his right is so being infringed on a more negative aspect. Now what is that? All positive order with all fairness is just coming to enforce his right in a more positive way, right? Administrative inaction நாலயோ இல்ல எக்ஸிகியூட்டிவ் inaction நாலயோ அல்லது லெஜிஸ்லேட்டிவ் எக்ஸஸ்னாலயோ வந்து ஏதோ ஒரு நெகட்டிவா ஒன்னு நடந்து போச்சதுதான் இப்ப பாசிட்டிவா ரெக்டிஃபை பண்றதுக்கு நான் கோர்ட்டுக்கு போறேன். அப்ப what is that constitutional mandate? It must be come from the order of the court as a mandate. Article 226 ரிட் போடுறோம், அதுதான் ரிட் ஆஃப் மேண்டமஸ். என்ன what you are directing? Now you have to mandate the authorities in what way? By doing something in a more positive way. What all is expected from the court? A positive direction, a positive mandamus. அதுக்கு பேரே positive mandamus. என்னது? In the term of either to at least to consider your representation. கடைசியா நம்ம சொல்றோமா, வேற வழியே இல்ல, ஒண்ணுமே கொடுக்க வேண்டாம், at least my representation could be considered. இதுதானே கேட்கிறோம். அப்ப என்ன, you expect the authorities to act in a more positive way by way of issuing a positive command, right? You don't want, நீங்க இதை செய்யாதீங்க, நெகட்டிவா போய் கன்சிடர் பண்ண வேண்டாம்னு சொல்றது இல்ல. So it is a constitutional mandate or a positive mandate. We can take it. அதுதான் appropriate. That could be the apt enough or appropriate answer. I suppose. I may be right or wrong, but this is what, from this perspective, I'm just throwing the answers to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
You may be wrong or other way around. You can just justify your answer with some other context, subject to approval, right?
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Any other hand raise or questions on the chat? I think, Pratap, I think we can close for today. There's no other questions.
Yes, if there is no question from anyone, we can wind up.
Okay. Thank you so much for today's session. We are closing jurisprudence with this session. So we'll have a different topic will be posted in the WhatsApp group. Thank you, Pratap, on behalf of all the participants and the legal elites. It's my privilege. I thank you once again. Thank you so much. Thursday, we are having your interpretation of statutes. So you will be joining us on Thursday at the same time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.